8 days ago, I gave the Republicans zero chance, zero, of keeping the majority in the state Senate or the House of Delegates. Zero chance. That means 0.00. Now, I give him a 35% chance of keeping the Senate. That Dick Black's district is still blue. They got a shot, though, now if they find a good candidate. And I give him a 75% chance to 80 of keeping the speaker's gavel. Kirk Cox is going to be the speaker again. Republicans are going to win seats in 2019. This is such a disaster for the Democrats. Are they even equipped to handle this? Ben Tribbett is coming up. I just tweeted out a new billboard I'm buying in downtown Richmond. Also put it on Facebook. I texted it to Ben. That's what we're going to do. It's a picture in downtown Richmond of Terry McAuliffe in the mansion, Governor McGenius, with a beer, with a headline, "Miss Me Yet?" Anybody out there who wants to apologize to me for criticizing me for calling McAuliffe Governor McGenius, voting for him, and supporting him for 4 years, although we had our differences on a lot of issues, I will accept your apology via text, email, or you can call me 888-480-5646 because you really wish Terry McAuliffe was your governor right now. No question about it. To try to break all this down for us, the best Democratic mind in Virginia, maybe in the country, political consultant Ben Tribbett. You can follow Ben at Not Larry Sabato. Ben, thanks for being with us today on such short notice. Wow, what a week.
It's really something, John.
What do you think of my billboard on I-64-95 in Richmond? What do you think? You like it?
Look, I mean, I think that people probably would agree with you that they wish that Terry was back, but I guess from my perspective, John, this is what led to what's going on here has been a slow rot, that's been going on in the Democratic Party for a while. I mean, I think that when you look at how vacuous the policy discussions had become, when you look at, the 2017 primary campaigns and how people talked about who their friends were and who got in first and nothing about, it wasn't really a policy fight. It was more about that. Think about, situations like we have with Delegate Lopez, where he worked with ICE, or there's numerous other legislators who have had these scandals where the Democratic Party just seems to just sort of push them under the table and ignore that they're happening. And I think that it's led to what's gone on here. I just think that, the party has not been vetting. It's turned into a friends and family type of organization. And that's what led to all three of them going. Now, all three of them did different things, right? And they're different situations. But the big overlying picture here is that the party, has clearly not been vetting candidates in the way that they needed to vet them. And I think that at the end of the day, the governor will stay in office, and I think that the attorney general will stay in office. I think that what they did was wrong, but it was also a long time ago. And I think that people can get past that. The activists that all jumped on the governor so quickly and wanted him to resign, I think did so because there was a Democratic lieutenant governor. And you're watching the absolute fraud come out when a similar story hit yesterday about Mark Herring. And no, I'm not differentiating, John, blackface versus brown makeup as was differentiated in the Attorney General's statement, which I thought was outrageous. Mm-hmm. But what you're seeing is when it came out about the Attorney General, no one has called for his resignation. And the reason is an Attorney General vacancy is filled by a joint session of the General Assembly, and a Republican would replace him. So everyone went silent because apparently what the Attorney General did, it does not rise to the level of Democrats being willing to hand over the office to a Republican for the next 3 years. And what I said to people on Friday, as this was all happening very, very quickly, way too quickly, by the way, about the governor, was no one should issue any statement that they would not have issued if Joe Vogel was the lieutenant governor. Because if the governor did something so serious that the Democrats were willing to hand over the office to a Republican, then issue your statement. But don't issue your statement because there's a Democratic lieutenant governor, and so you can just throw him under the bus really quickly. Do you see what I'm saying, John?
Yes.
And that's the intellectual rot that was in the party, and what has and since then has been completely exposed. Okay? The other thing that's going on here is that now you have, and this is humiliating for the party. Thank goodness for Jennifer Wexton yesterday being the first to break it. But you have everyone rush to the door to throw Ralph Northam out the door on Friday. Yet almost nothing has been said about the Justin Fairfax allegations. And let me tell you the difference between the two situations. Mm-hmm. Ralph's was a horrible use of judgment. It was terrible. And the imagery was awful. The allegations against Justin are a crime, a serious felony. Mm-hmm. The allegations are rape, and they are much more serious. And the idea that the party leadership lost its tongue on felony allegations but ran to the door with the governor is appalling. Okay? It is absolutely appalling. And you see the Democratic Party of Virginia issue a statement about the governor on Friday, rush to the door, but they have a press assistant that is with Justin in the Capitol when he's making his first announcements about this situation, assisting him with a rape allegation. I mean, there is a real problem here, and it is top down in the party. And you look at our activists, and this problem is not at the activist level. The problem is at the leadership level. Mm-hmm. And people have got to get their house in order here.
Jennifer Wexton broke party ranks yesterday to support the woman who accused Virginia's Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax of sexually assaulting her. But she's a lonely voice in the Democratic Party. Why? Of Virginia.
I'm absolutely flabbergasted as to why. I mean, first of all, the Democrats obviously have run on a slogan nationally of believing women. And the reason that slogan exists, and I know that this irks a lot of Republicans because of the Kavanaugh situation, and people immediately go into a discussion as if it's a criminal trial, a presumption of innocence, and all these other things. And you absolutely, and by the way, and this applies with whether it's Brett Kavanaugh or Justin Fairfax or anyone else accused, in a criminal proceeding, they absolutely still have the benefit of the presumption of innocence, okay? This is not a criminal proceeding right now. This is about being a public official. And so we're at a different level of how you have to judge things. And whether it's the Kavanaugh situation or the Fairfax situation, what's similar about both of them is that neither one of those women had any motivation to come forward and destroy their lives. And by the way, it does destroy their lives to do so. But come forward and do that for no reason. So this is not, something that's a 50-50 call. This is not, this woman that's come forward about Justin Fairfax is a Democratic activist, and apparently has been for a long time because she was so active. She was attending the 2004 Democratic convention, right? And you think that she wants to take down a Democratic elected official 3,000 miles away with a false allegation? I mean, the idea that this is a 50-50 is absurd. It's been absurd from the moment it came out. Of course you should believe her. That doesn't mean that Justin shouldn't have the opportunity to make a case himself, and he very well may have to in civil or even in criminal court. But irregardless of whether it ends up in court or not, the level in which this has to be discussed is at a level of, can you have the confidence of the public going forward? And should someone who has a serious, credible allegation of them, and this is a allegation, by the way, I would call this rape, John. You know, when you use the word sexual assault can be as, you know, I don't want to make any sexual assault sound minor, but, you know, a grope could be a sexual assault, right?
Yes.
This was not just a sexual assault, okay, it based on her allegation.
Yes.
That person cannot be presiding over the state Senate and a moment away from becoming governor. He has to resign. Period.
Yet no calls on him to resign from
Zero.
anybody. Zero. 100 calls.
I think that Wexton was essentially a call. She didn't come out and say it, but she opened with, I believe the accuser. And I think that if you explore that further with her, I don't believe that Jennifer Wexton would say that if she believes the accuser that someone who perpetrated this should be lieutenant governor, right? So I think she essentially did. But we need to see a lot more of this today. A lot more of this today.
Well, so far we haven't seen it. We had 100 calls for Governor Northam to resign by both Virginia and national Democrats and Republicans, but no calls for Fairfax to resign, which I think is very duplicitous here, especially just in what happened. I mean, either you're honest in your consistency or not. I think, and I just want to get your opinion here, I think Herring's done. I mean, if you read the statement that he put out on Saturday after the moronic comedy show Amateur Hour hit the gong press conference of the governor, which is, he doesn't have enough people in there that know what they're doing. That thing was such a debacle. It was like a comedy show. But Herring put out a very cryptic, statement. It was not, he didn't elaborate. It was just cryptic. Basically, Northam's got to go. Then he does the same thing. Somebody taps him on the shoulder and says, Mr. Attorney General, you got a problem here. You did the same thing. And then he puts out this sniveling response, which I found laughable. I mean, how do you take Mark Herring seriously, Ben? Honestly, after this reversal of position in 48 hours.
First of all, I mean, the idea that statement left Mark Herring's office at any point about Ralph Northam when this had happened in the past, this falls entirely on Mark Herring. Obviously, his staff didn't know this existed. And this is where the elected official has to say, hey, guys, I don't want to put out that statement. And you don't even have to elaborate and tell them why. You just have to say no. But he let the statement go out under his name, and it's going to have very bad ramifications for Mark. I don't think he will resign. I don't think he should resign. I actually think that at this point that we need to have a real reconciliation here in the state. I don't think that their resigning is going to lead to that. However, I would not be surprised if Mark Herring does not run for re-election, because I think that the way that this looked for him was just devastating. I think for him to come back from this, he's going to have to provide a lot more explanation as to his position on the governor versus, when he had done something similar. And again, I do not differentiate blackface and brown makeup. I thought that was an outrageous comparison.
Outrageous.
I don't care that he was dressing up as Curtis Blow.
Outrageous.
And John, I'm not judging them in the time period that they were in because, look, right. I was born in 1979. Right. The Herring incident happened before I was born. The Northam incident happened when I was a toddler, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know the social construct then. Everyone says that they should have known better. From what I can tell from just some research is that, there was still a lot of this activity that was going on at that time. Mm-hmm. But this is a discussion we had. It's causing a lot of people a lot of pain, and that's always bad for elected officials. So, it needs to be taken very seriously. I just can't understand why the Democratic Party loses its tongue on so many issues. And it's not just been this week. Like I told you, I mean, do you remember a few years ago when there was the bizarre story with David Toscano that was on the national news, and he put out a statement and said, I'm not going to discuss this further. And the party just accepted it. He went on as minority leader for 5 years. And there may not be anything behind it. I'm not going to speculate as to what else went on in that story, but that's not acceptable. More explanation need to be given if you're going to be the Democratic Party leader. You have Alfonso Lopez sitting in the House working for ICE, and people accepted the explanation that he was working for ICE to do good work, and then just let it go. This has not the beginning of the intellectual rot in this party, but it needs to be the end of it.
We're with Ben Tribbett, longtime Democratic consultant in Virginia, also nationally. And Ben Tribbett, you can follow him at Not Larry Sabato. Ben earlier saying on the herring issue that if Jill Vogel had got elected lieutenant governor, that the calls for Northam to resign have been as enthusiastic by the Democrats? That's really the question. Now,
there would have been zero.
There would have been zero, right? I mean, so therefore you're politicizing it just by virtue of the fact that there was a progressive Democrat sitting in the number 2 spot that would have been elevated. So I agree with you. There would be no calls for Northam to resign had Jill Vogel won that election, and she would ascend to the governorship. 2 more quick things. Allegations that Vanessa Tyson, Professor Tyson, shared this with Bobby Scott. That was published in a number of newspapers overnight. We've also heard that she also may have shared it with Senator Mark Warner, and then it just went nowhere. Now, that is alleged, but what has been on various journals is that it was shared with Bobby Scott, and his staff confirmed that. So any blowback on Representative Scott?
John, I think that's what I'm going to take if we could, next time I come on in a couple of days, because I actually have heard that there's some more information that's going to be breaking on that today. Okay. And I don't want to take away from another reporter's stories. So why don't we come back to that, because I think that may actually be better explained later.
I respect that, Ben. I respect that. So you don't think Herring can run for re-election? I don't either. I don't think he can run for governor. He's already announced. I think he's done. I just couldn't imagine him launching a gubernatorial campaign under any circumstances. Sitting in Richmond.
John, can I say it's so ridiculous, because and one of the things that really changed on Northam and why you've seen the thing quiet down a little bit. I heard from a number of members of the Black Caucus that they really felt humiliated by a segment that went on CNN on Monday where Cornel West came on. And I don't know if you saw that segment, John, but
I didn't.
Essentially, Cornel West spoke to, and I don't want to paraphrase his words, he spoke it much better than anyone else could, but essentially his argument was that what happened here was not appropriate because an important part of the Black legacy in the country of being able to move forward is allowing people that have made mistakes to have a path to redemption. And then no path to redemption was offered here, and I think, for obvious reasons, to the governor. Because there was a lieutenant governor who could just step up. And what he spoke to was the mistake that is for the Black community. And my understanding is after that segment, quite a number of members in the Black Caucus really felt like they had made a mistake, while there was another group that felt like they had done the right thing and wanted to stick with it. And there's been a lot of internal discussion since then of we may have acted too fast, and more importantly, not providing a path to redemption. And I will say this, John, and I've been saying this since Friday, the biggest mistake people made here is if you look at the overall trajectory in Virginia, we have a lot of Democrats in the western part of the state that have become Republicans, and a lot of Republicans in the eastern part of the state that have become Democrats. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Those people that were conservative earlier in their life or Republicans earlier in their life who are now Democrats, they may not have passed the progressive purity test for their entire lives. And so what message are we sending to them? Are we saying, we don't want you to come over and support our candidates? We don't want you to redeem yourself? Or, and so people live lives. They have to be able to have an opportunity for that. And you look at Governor Northam and his accomplishments as a public official, and Mark Herring and his accomplishments as a public official, and the votes that they've cast that have been positive for all Virginians, but especially minority community. And really, it's hard to make an argument as to how they haven't, if these things are true, at least tried in their public office, tried to redeem themselves. And it's a big mistake to not give people that opportunity.
Ben, we're
and that doesn't in any way, John, could I just end with this? That doesn't in any way excuse what they did. And right. I'm not trying to excuse what they did. Right. It's just to say you've got to have a path forward.
Ben, we're out of time. Thank you for sharing that, Ben. I know I can feel your emotion. I can feel it right through the airwaves, and I appreciate your joining us today. I know that this has been a tough week for you.